Okay.
All right, let's get started with the reporting back. I think we want to get as many of these issues down on paper. So should we maybe start with the issues and see if we can get through that, and then go to some of the other questions after. So the issues that your group came up with.
Okay, I guess I'll summarize them real quick here. We had some good stories, but I circled the issues. We started off with the gap between the wealthy and the poor, the growing gap, and how it's obviously you can see the statistics by region. But what's interesting was the intersection of this gap with issues of race and gender. We were wondering how the justice system relates to this growing gap and the cross-section with race and gender. Good story around that, we'll tell you later. Another issue that came up then out of that, which was an interesting issue that kind of came up over and over, was not just about the criminal justice system, but the creation of the ghetto, or these urban centers. And one person talked about Bridgeport, how much has changed since 1963. Why? And so it's Vacan is a sociologist that kind of relates to this, the ghetto and the prison. So I thought that was fascinating that we came up with the issue of ghetto, criminal justice system. And then one person brought up an issue in New Haven wanting to look at how we have a school to prison pipeline, but what about the school to mental health pipeline? She's seen more and more people would like to see that looked into, how kids are moved from detention into mental health institutions or institutionalized.
Say that last one again.
Moving from school detention to mental health. Another issue was trauma to the family because of incarceration, having someone gone or absent. Drug policy, drug use. With drug policy, it was real specific that we need to look into the issue of prescription drugs and the dangers they pose, and the politics around the research of the prescription drugs versus drugs that are made illegal. Employment came up at this intersection. Employment as discrimination and employment as lack of opportunities with fair wages, both. Education, the disparities in the school system related to this wealth, gender, race thing. Violence and guns. And then jail seen as punishment and not rehabilitation, so you get out, can't get a job. And the last thing, white privilege, especially when it relates to arrests, police officers, and our good story.
Great. Okay, the violence and guns, was that the connection between the two?
No, it was a different thing. Violence and guns was an issue by itself.
Just by itself, okay. Who was reporting back from the group? Okay.
We had, our group came up with a few things. One issue is that the demographic sheet didn't cover the transgender community for the most part. It seems like they're left out of a lot of demographic info. Another one was that people talked about the fact that in Connecticut we have these the range from the super high to the super low, where the ghettos are extremely poor, and then we have the super rich areas. People are talking about their experiences of traveling from those different places, whether it's to go to school at UConn and cow country and farmland, and then coming back to New Haven and living in the ghetto. And people talked about the issue of like Bridgeport being forgotten often, or maybe like our inner cities being forgotten in general. There was issues about police harassment, the youth when they're not really committing crimes, but being totally absent when crimes are being committed and responding late to crimes being committed. Another issue brought up was reverse white flight, with the rent in Hartford and downtown is getting raised a lot, and concerns about what that means for working class and poor people in poor communities. There was a big issue that was brought up was the after-school programs. People were wondering about funding into after-school programs and how that correlates to violence in the neighborhoods. Also, what the quality of those after-school programs are, how good they are, how well funded, what the qualifications for people to get in them, and whether parents are being charged for them. Also, there was an issue about trying to find out how money is spent on after-school programs. Accounting for it seems to be extremely difficult. And then Second to last was the misreporting of dropout data in the schools. People are trying to find out what's the real number of kids that are graduating and dropped out as opposed to what's being reported. And then the last was the issue of rehabilitation and drug treatment, and the quality of drug treatment that people are getting seems to be extremely crappy.
Yeah. Well put.
Different issue.
Okay. And
What group was that?
us.
I was actually giving him a compliment. People won't didn't hear it.
I think that a lot of the stuff that each of us covered kind of intersects, but we also covered reentry and just how that affects what your prospects are after you get out of jail, what programs exist, but also just like how does history of incarceration affect your ability to get a job, what are your offerings, how does that affect your prospects for the future. We were interested in youth and juveniles in this incarcerated systems with treatment and how people get just pushed in and out, the whole vortex thing. Schools is a safe zone, or is a safe place with regard to hate crime and bullying, and just where everyone can have their space to develop and learn, and just getting data on that. Domestic violence and understanding what how people are treated with regards to getting put in prison for defending themselves against their spouses or against their spouses' ex-spouses or whatever. Also just in general, what programs exist for youth or anything really, what just data on who's in what program. And then of course the prison complex industry, who benefits from it, what does it entail, and then who doesn't go to jail. So who gets other things for whatever reason, if it's treatment in the suburbs or if it's just jail in the urban areas.
Wow.
Oh yeah, and school suspension and how issues outside of school sort of see the travel back into school.
Okay. So, yeah, fair amount of overlap, I think, between the issues, which makes sense between the groups. How many groups got to discuss the research areas, like in broader terms? No, not really. We just to put it out there, we have 4 different groups that were the initial framework we were thinking of for the research agendas. One is juvenile justice as a research area. These are very broad, so think about whether the issues that you developed in your group would fit under these categories, and I'll list them, and then if there's something that doesn't fit that you can jumps to mind, let us know. We have juvenile justice research area, the public health research area, drug policy research area, and public safety research area. So those are the broad kinds of.
Where would education fit?
Good question. That could be. Well, let's just write them down. So, yeah.
Maybe under public health, we just talk a little bit about research looking at the effect on children of having their parents go to prison, what those effects are, what that means, and how various states or programs may deal with that effectively, or not deal with it effectively.
Right.
What's out there?
It seems like education could fall within each of these groups as, a special area of interest, because it overlaps with public health, with public safety, which was a lot of what we were talking about in our group too.